Rose Olson, Laura Archuleta, Adam Mack, Corey Crete, and Josh Hamilton will round out our programming for this morning. This panel is led by Kari with Clifton, Larson, Allen. Kari, good morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Heyman with Clifton, Larson, Allen. We are the 8th largest professional services firm in the country, new to the Los Angeles market, or relatively new to the Los Angeles market. Very big in real estate. I'm very happy to be here. And with me today was supposed to be 4 panelists, but we'll wing it. We'll do 3.
Good morning. My name is Arjun Nagarkadi with AmCal. We are a multifaceted company. We primarily do multi-housing, but we do affordable, market rate, workforce, and student housing. We are began actually in Los Angeles, but have moved to Texas too, as well as Washington State.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Durandell. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Goldrich Kest. This year will be our 62nd year in real estate. We have about 15,000 apartment units. A little less than half are affordable. Also, industrial footprint across the country, marinas, assisted living facilities, and the like. Very pleased to be here today.
My name is Andre Bueno. I run a company called Bueno Group. We focus on affordable housing development, and we're doing more middle-income housing here in Los Angeles. We're on Instagram and LinkedIn at Bueno Bomb, so in case anyone does tag. Take it off.
We'll take a selfie in a little bit.
Perfect.
Andre, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about Bueno, and then what makes your company different from other affordable housing owners, operators, syndicators.
So we've been doing this for 3 generations. So a lot of what we focus on is we've tried to use the impact investment model for a lot of how we're doing a lot of our projects. So in the Midwest, for example, we finished a 17 building project that we were housing a lot of political refugees and homeless veterans. And we're doing this by acquiring existing assets out of bankruptcy, using structured finance, and whatever it really takes to get the deal done. And as we kind of think about development and the way it's changing, we've been thinking through how to disintermediate the entire process from how we acquire the land to how we finance it to really how we even lease the project out. And that's where Real Estate 3.0 is going.
Mike, what about you, Goldrich Kest? 62 years, what's your secret sauce?
We bought a lot and built a lot of our buildings back in the 60s and 70s. We hang on to them for a long time. As Jonah Goldrich, our patriarch, had said, inflation is a good thing, especially when you're on real estate. We were developing when HUD first came out, and at one point in time in the early 70s, we were the largest privately held owner of affordable housing in the state of California. In general, we've been very focused on making sure that those residents that are at our properties are well taken care of, and that we provide housing that is better than other conventional housing that's within the neighborhood. So in general, you would drive down a normal middle-class neighborhood in West Covina or the Valley or anything else, and our properties would effectively stand out as being the best on that block. And it's really caring for our properties and caring for our residents long-term. Is that secret sauce enough for you?
I don't think I want to answer that. Arjun, tell us a little bit about AmCal.
Yeah, AmCal just celebrated its 40th year. We've actually been, as I said, we started off in Southern California and then moved to other regions. Our secret sauce, I would say, is the fact that we are diversified both in product type and in the geographic regions has really helped us both in terms of, especially now, in terms of low employment, keeping the workforce, and having them work with us because as we've seen economies grow and economies fall, we've really had a line of business that takes us through each one of these economies. And so, to give you an example, our management staff probably is on average maybe 10 to 12 years. And that has really benefited us on the long run.
Very nice. Andre, you were touching about third generation, real estate ownership 3.0. What are you doing differently now than 1 to 2 years ago?
We've invested a lot in technology over the last 2 years. So like when I took over the business in 2008 or 2007, really, like we were posting ads on Craigslist and going to like Skid Row Housing Trust and like picking up people and like bringing them to our properties. And then now like we've seen like how technology has played like such a huge part like in this entire process, where we're setting up websites with like front-end AI integration so that we're communicating directly with the individuals to get them to funnel down into our Calendly link so that they could do a property tour. We have like an offshore team in the Philippines that handles a lot of like our day-to-day leasing so that we're really doing more strategy here onshore. We're getting them basically down the funnel by getting them through an Instagram or getting them really, at least on our website, so that we can collect that data. And then we're, engaging them, re-engaging them. We're starting now to look at like Facebook advertisements so that we can like pixelate a lot of our messages and then get them like on email. The idea is to get this entire universe and funnel it down to get these individuals to our property.
Can you tell who the resident millennial is on the panel?
Someone already took the title. I don't want to call that guy out.
Mike, Arjun, technology with you guys, anything you're doing differently today than 1 to 2 years prior?
1 to 2 years ago is a little too soon in my mind. I think that the fact is that I completely agree with Andre in the fact that technology has changed everything. I was talking to somebody earlier in the hallway who said, "Oh, I haven't seen you for a while." I said, "Yeah, last time we were working together, there was no internet." The fact is that it has provided a significant amount of availability, and the question is when you're talking about low-income housing, do those residents have access to all of these, the new technologies as of today? I think the answer is generally yes, but you still need to go ahead and pinpoint them and get them in the right direction. We have a new panelist. But in general, I think that from operations of our affordable housing properties for right now, there really hasn't been a significant change in the last year, 2, 3, 4, anything along those lines, other than worrying about the federal government shutting down and not giving your subsidy, things like that.
In terms of technology, I mean, we've actually toyed with the possibility of using modular housing, and we've been actually looking at that for the last 7 years. I mean, of late, the issue we've had thus far, or maybe in the past, is that the designs themselves weren't really comparable with what we typically like to see in terms of a finished product, but that's come a long way. I think the bigger issue now is really making sure you have somebody on site when you actually have those modular units come in and assemble the product, because your site staff may be different from the folks actually building it in the factory. So that's one of the ways. I mean, this really gets down to costs, and we've been constantly thinking of and working on costs. We actually do our own construction, so from that standpoint, we've been looking at every element. Way back, maybe 15 years ago, we used to use wall systems because that could kind of hasten the process of construction, and that would help us. So we're constantly looking at different things we can do to basically lower costs and get a nice product.
June, tell us about Los Angeles traffic.
Okay. I apologize for being late. Drove in from Orange County, 2.5 hours, which is a record for me. So, and on top of it, I get here, there's no parking out front. So anyway, I apologize.
What company?
I'm with Advantage Capital Management, one of the partners, and I'm also president of Advantage Development, which is a recently formed development company focused on projects in opportunity zones.
All right, let's hit the ground running with you then. Anything you guys are doing differently than you were 1 to 2 years ago, where I just found out 1 to 2 isn't a good gauge 4 to 5 years ago, maybe?
Well, just to give you a little background, our company, we own about 10,000 units of affordable and workforce housing across the U.S. We have about $1.5 billion assets under management, and 30% of our portfolio is age restricted, so generally 62 years plus. And one thing we're doing differently than we did a couple years ago is we're about to embark on a health and wellness program for our senior citizens.
Gentlemen, what is the biggest misconception that people have about affordable housing, and then affordable housing in our marketplace, Southern California?
The best line I think I heard was from one of our development partners who was had a program for, I think it was 80 or 90 unit affordable housing building that we were under development, and he's getting ready to go to the city council meeting and says, I need to go meet with the city council and convince everybody that we're not putting up an instant hovel. It's the local people surrounding affordable housing. When you want to develop into it, they're the people that are the most difficult to work with. That's in my opinion. In general, once they're there, once you have a building, once you have actual residents, there's no more the boogeyman out there of, well, what does low income mean? That's from my standpoint.
That's certainly true. I mean, it's really the fear of the unknown. People pictured low-income housing as something that was built back in the 50s and 60s that didn't quite, weren't quite managed well, and they didn't have the kind of oversight the present, Section 42 projects have in terms of, quality, in terms of, the kind of residents and the monitoring of activities to make sure there's, retention. So effectively, looking at it from the standpoint of the NIMBY groups, I think it takes a lot for all of us to basically educate them, telling them the kind of housing they expect to see. And I agree with Michael. I mean, it's really, once the residents come in, they really see a nice product. I mean, looking at most Section 42 product, you probably have them looking better than sometimes market rate product. I mean, there's so many bells and whistles required by the cities that actually push costs up, that kind of ends up with a product that's sometimes much better.
Andre, you have an interesting perspective on dealing with neighboring residents on new investments, new developments. Can you touch on that?
Yeah. So I guess it really depends on what's been the storyline in a given neighborhood before we're able to actually engage with the people. For example, like in Koreatown, we were looking at initially doing this homeless housing project. Got really fired up. We've been looking at modular for the last couple of years. We found like a robotics factory that was going to help us like transport the panels in, and we got it to pencil, but the community wasn't feeling it. And the reality is, we started looking at highest and best use. We started realizing that in order to engage with the community, not only do you have to understand the storyline before it, you have to build that storyline out. And I feel like as developers, we have so many more tools at our disposal now where I can get, my great architect like Andrew, for example, to crank out like an amazing rendering of here's what it's going to look like, and then we could just start pushing it through Facebook ads, and we can start looking at how people are actually looking at this stuff. See a lot of people looking and shaking heads saying, why are you doing this through Facebook? The reality is like 60% of the people here are probably on Facebook every single day. And if you think about our residents, like the way we interact as a society, it's changed dramatically in the last 5 years, right? We do this all day when we want to get shit. And then when we want to date, we go left and right, right? So we have like different dynamics into like in how we order our transportation, in how we finance acquisitions, and how we even communicate with people. So I think on one hand, it's important to acknowledge that the community does have a say, but we also have a lot more opportunities to storytell aggressively if we need to.
June, are there any factors preventing investors from investing in affordable housing in the Southern California market?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we do have a sizable portfolio down in Southern California, particularly San Diego County, LA County. And our investor base are institutional investors. So these are pension funds, insurance companies, banks. We also have a number of foreign investors. And for us, it's been an education process. As was mentioned earlier in the panel, there is a misconception about affordable housing. And so, one of the joys that we have is touring our investors, particularly from Europe, to see one of our projects. One of which is actually that we acquired from AmCal. It's 101 units in Chinatown, downtown LA. And when our investors see these projects, they're just amazed because there is a misconception of affordable housing, like the public housing, or for those of you who remember Cabrini Green in Chicago, that's sort of misconception that people have of public housing. So for us, it's just an education process. And once they see these properties, then they're turned around immediately.
I think LA is a strong market for affordable housing, and it's really the population, and it's really a big CRA market. So you really have, on the equity and debt side, you have a lot of investors as well as lenders competing to buy tax credits or to loan on such projects. So it's really, a shortage of projects that we have, and there's got to be some way we can build a lot more. Hopefully, with a lot of focus on affordable housing, with the governor pushing housing overall, I think there might be, I expect changes to happen both at the state level and at city levels to kind of promote and get more housing off the ground.
So I promise not to make this political, but because you segued me so beautifully, I get one political question, right? Okay. This is for everyone on the panel. Let's do some role playing. Let's imagine you were running for governor of California or for mayor of Los Angeles. We have an affordable housing crisis. What platform do you politic for? How do we solve this dilemma that seems to be a ballot initiative every other year? That's what you want when you moderate silence. Andre Bueno, 2020, go for it.
Who here does underwriting? Raise your hand. Awesome. You guys are fucking shit up.
Go, Andre.
The reality is we need to think about how we house our people, because if the largest transportation company in the world doesn't own any cars, Uber, and the largest hotel owner in the world doesn't own any hotels, Airbnb, the only thing that's going to differentiate how we do housing that's different than like the co-working model is that you have to build to suit. And we can change that. But if you guys keep fucking underwriting to a DCR and you guys aren't thinking about different ways that we can house people, like a co-living or a student housing like model that works. You have assisted living for the seniors. And when you get like certain places like Cal Lutheran, where you have student housing and senior housing next door to each other, you have great benefits. So we need to think about real estate development through the lens of impact and what are we doing for our communities, not what we're underwriting to. At the end of the day, if you add value to the communities and you make it better, everything's better. 2020.
Andre, I'll be your chief of staff. I was thinking more along the lines of the fact is that there needs to be just a pie in the sky. We need $3.5 million, 3.5 million new homes in California in the next 5 years. Whatever that stat was. The fact is there needs to be a direct partnership with those that are developing, with those that are in the neighborhood, and those that are in public office, and those that are bureaucrats. The LADBS needs to be on board to be able to build what we need for the city of Los Angeles, for the greater Los Angeles County area, or anywhere else. Am I running for the entire state or just in the LA area?
You could run for chairman of the world for all I care.
Because the city of LA is very close to being what the city of San Francisco is turning into, which is you can't find housing there other than luxury housing. And that's really not acceptable. And it's not something that anyone would be thinking, oh, that's a great way for us to run our businesses and run our economy. And we need to be able to focus on something where we can bring in moderate income, workforce housing, affordable housing, homeless housing, everything else that we need, because everybody needs to be able to work together. Mike Randell, 2020.
Just to put it in perspective, we do a lot of housing in Texas, and one of the reasons why we do like housing there is because we can actually, from the time we tie a property, we can actually break ground in less than 9 months. Here in Los Angeles or here in California, it takes about 3.5 to 4.5 years before you can actually break ground. Time is money, and so if I had my, choice, I would probably push to getting quicker approvals, CEQA regulations, and all the other regulations that basically slow down the process, and that, in a sense, really increases risk too for all of us. To hold on to a project for 4 years or 4.5 years, you have regulations that change, you have BDAs that go out, or QCTs that are no longer QCTs. And so that adds to the cost. So from that standpoint, I'd say the number one thing would be, a faster process at the cities.
Okay.
Your platform can be better freeways, but your second item,
If I was mayor or governor, and I don't know if the current mayor has one, but I would appoint a housing czar to look at all these issues regarding regulation, look at underutilized, publicly owned land, land banking. I strongly advocate bringing back the redevelopment